She used her stunning beauty as bait, luring men into motel rooms to test her murder formula. She continuously adjusted the ratios and dosages of the drug through questions with I. The victims showed no signs of struggle, no wounds, and the police were initially even fooled into believing they were natural deaths. Thanks to this, she repeatedly slipped away from the crime scene without suspicion. Hello everyone, I am Vo Nam and you're tuning into a true crime story. Today we'll take a look back at a recent case, the Gangbuk Motel serial murders. Around 6 p.m. on February 10, 2026 at a motel in Gangbuk District, Seoul, staff discovered a room that had not yet been checked out despite the deadline having passed at noon. They repeatedly called the room internally all afternoon but no one answered. As the evening rush hour approached, staff decided to use a spare key to open the door and check. When the door opened, they were met with a horrifying sight. A man in his 20s lay on the bed, neatly dressed, his eyes closed. His complexion had turned an unusual purplish blue, clearly having been dead for a long time. Gangbuk District police quickly arrived at the scene and cordoned off the area. However, initial examination revealed no wounds on the victim's body. No signs of strangulation. There were no weapons or bloodstains in the room either. The entire scene appeared meticulously clean. The motel's security cameras captured a crucial detail. Around 8:40 p.m. on February 9, 2026, the victim, identified by the surname Lee, entered the motel with a young woman. They were seen chatting cheerfully as they walked. However, about 2 hours later, hallway cameras recorded the woman appearing alone. She walked very quickly, carrying a black plastic bag, and then left the motel. What was in that bag? Why did she leave alone? And what happened in that room? To find answers, police began investigating the surrounding area or tried to find the taxi driver who took the woman away from the motel that night. The driver recounted that when the woman got into the car, she was very panicked, as if she was fleeing. As soon as the car door closed, she immediately urged me, "Go faster, drive a bit quicker." At the same time, during the examination of the victim Lee's phone, police discovered a very strange message sent shortly after the woman left the motel. The content was just a short sentence. "You fell asleep because you were too drunk. I got bored, so I left first." However, when forensic experts recovered deeper data, they discovered a crucial detail. Before leaving the room, the woman herself had touched and operated the victim's phone. In other words, she not only left the scene, she also fabricated a false message to create an alibi for herself. The message she intended to send to the police in the future was very clear. "When I left, this man was still alive. He was just sleeping. His death was entirely an accident. As I left, this man was still alive. He was only sleeping. His death was entirely accidental." While investigators were still analyzing the fake camera footage and messages, a seasoned detective suddenly recalled a case from 11 days prior. At another motel in the area, a man in his 20s had also been found deceased. His body in a nearly identical state. No visible wounds, no signs of struggle, and peacefully expired in bed. As there were no clear leads at the time, the case was temporarily ruled as death by unknown causes. But when police set up cameras on January 28, 2026, and then again on February 9, 2026 to compare the footage side by side, they discovered a detail that astonished everyone. The woman appearing in both incidents was the same person. At this point, the police understood that these were not random sudden deaths and certainly not coincidences. Someone was lurking in the shadows of Seoul, using motels to hunt young men according to a plan. After identifying her, police confirmed the woman in the camera footage was Kim, 20 years old. But the biggest question remained: why was she targeting men who seemed completely unsuspecting? In serial murder cases, investigators often look for motives rooted in the perpetrator's childhood. Many offenders experience domestic violence or extreme psychological trauma, leading to distorted personalities. However, according to criminal behavior analysts, Kim's case was different. They theorized she was a psychopathic personality. The core characteristic of this personality type is a complete lack of empathy. Individuals like this are virtually immune to moral standards and social norms. In their perception, others are merely tools to satisfy personal desires. And more frighteningly, they are often adept at disguise and emotional manipulation. A former classmate of Kim's later recalled that even in middle school, she had once stolen a classmate's Apple earbuds. Normally, a student stealing from a friend would feel at least some anxiety and try to hide the evidence. However, Kim was entirely different. She showed no signs of guilt. On the contrary, Kim brazenly posted the stolen earbuds on a second-hand marketplace to sell them openly. When the incident was discovered, she displayed no shame or remorse. In Kim's mind, theft was not a crime. For her, it was simply a way to obtain what she wanted as long as she wasn't caught. Or if she was caught but could talk her way out of it, then everything was fine. Furthermore, several men who had dated Kim revealed to the media about her behavior when she was with them. According to them, during every meeting, Kim would appear gentle and attentive, creating an innocent impression to lower their guard. On one date, she pretended to hold her date's belongings to examine them. But as soon as he wasn't paying attention, she casually took a Starbucks gift card worth 50,000 won, approximately $40 United States dollars, from his wallet. Even a hat placed nearby was casually taken by her. On another occasion, even more daringly, Kim took a man's bank card she had just met and walked straight into a pharmacy, swiping the card to pay for 100,000 won, approximately 1.8 million Vietnamese dong, for health supplements. This unusual transaction immediately sparked controversy. When she realized she was about to be exposed, Kim showed no panic. On the contrary, she immediately changed her demeanor because the sum of 100,000 won led her to argue loudly in the middle of the street with the man who was both crying and trying to explain himself. She was adept at using the image of a vulnerable woman to mask her exploitative nature. Over time, Kim gradually began to see those around her, especially men, as tools for her exploitation. However, whether it was theft, deception, or using someone else's card, all these actions forced Kim to constantly lie, act, and deal with potential suspicions or arguments. Over time, the effort of acting just to get tens or hundreds of thousands of won became increasingly exhausting for her. Therefore, a different desire began to emerge in Kim's mind. She wanted her target to be completely silent, to simply lie still so she could manipulate them without the need for arguments or confrontation. It is for this reason that the story returns to October 2025, more than 3 months before the final motel case. At that time, Seoul's 119 emergency center received a call believed to have been made by Kim. She reported that a man she was with had suddenly collapsed. At the time, no one found this suspicious. Everyone assumed the man had simply fallen ill suddenly. However, when this event is placed alongside the series of cases that followed, many believe this call could very well have been Kim's first human drug trial. At that stage, Kim still dared not act directly, as she did not know the exact onset time and the potential danger of the drug in the human body. Therefore, the man that day almost became a guinea pig for her experiment. About 2 months later, Kim moved her testing ground to a cafe in Namyangju City. This time her target was her boyfriend, whom she had been dating for about a month, around 11:20 p.m. on December 14, 2025. After they stood talking in the parking lot for a while, Kim took out an energy drink from her bag and gave it to her boyfriend, saying it would help him stay awake. The boyfriend, suspecting nothing, immediately drank the entire can, but he did not know that Kim had previously mixed a large dose of benzodiazepine, a prescription drug used to treat severe insomnia and anxiety disorders, into the drink. Afterward, they both entered the cafe to rest. Within 20 minutes, the boyfriend began to feel dizzy, his eyelids heavy, almost unable to open. After a while, he collapsed to the ground and fell into a coma. Seeing her boyfriend gradually lose consciousness, Kim did not panic. She simply told those around her that he was tired from driving and pulled him into the car. Initially, Kim thought her boyfriend would die quickly, but she waited in vain for it to happen. And that never happened. She began to suspect the drug might not be potent enough, yet she hesitated to administer it. They were in a public parking lot, a place where anyone could pass by at any moment. After careful consideration, Kim finally called her boyfriend's parents, tearfully explaining he had fallen ill suddenly and required emergency medical attention. The man was rushed to the hospital, falling into a coma that lasted 2 days and 2 nights before he finally regained consciousness. Upon waking, his first instinct was to piece together what had happened before his hospitalization. After much thought, he could only recall one anomaly: the energy drink Kim had given him. For a young, healthy individual, the idea of succumbing to a mere drink was inexplicable. After his discharge, he sought out Kim for answers, but when confronted, Kim stammered, her eyes darting away, unable to offer a clear explanation. In that instant, the man was certain the woman before him had truly intended to end his life. He immediately proposed a breakup and left, consumed by fear. For over a month, he lived in a state of haunting dread and anxiety. Finally, after much internal struggle, on January 9, 2026, he walked into the local police station and formally accused Kim of poisoning his drink with intent to kill. However, by then more than a month had passed since the incident. The most crucial piece of evidence. The can that had contained the poison was gone, preventing the police from immediately arresting Kim. They could only proceed by collecting the man's blood for toxicology tests and planning to summon Kim for questioning. Meanwhile, after her trial run with her boyfriend, Kim began refining her poisoning methods. She frequently used AI software to pose questions like, what happens if sleeping pills are mixed with alcohol? What dosage is dangerous, and can it be fatal? The AI responded unequivocally that such actions were extremely dangerous, capable of causing respiratory failure and death. Seeing words like fatal and respiratory failure on the screen sent a thrill through Kim. To her, those words were akin to a complete guide for murder. Thus, Kim repeatedly returned to the AI, studying and consolidating her previous experiments. After extensive analysis, Kim identified 2 reasons for her past plan's failure. Firstly, the drug alone was not potent or fast-acting enough. Therefore, alcohol needed to be added to create a synergistic effect. Secondly, environmental factors. In public or semi-public spaces, a third party could appear at any moment, preventing her from completing her act flawlessly. Kim realized she needed a completely private space. However, before luring a victim into a secluded room such as a motel, she wanted to conduct one final experiment to precisely determine the onset time of the drug, according to the formula she had inquired about from the AI. This experiment took place on January 24, 2026, just days after Kim's ex-boyfriend reported to the Sugao police station. The scene was a karaoke bar in Suyudong, Gangbuk Gu, Seoul. The man accompanying Kim that day was in his 30s. Karaoke is a very special environment. Dim lights, loud music. The atmosphere of entertainment coupled with alcohol easily lowers a person's guard. After the two had a few drinks, Kim felt the time had come. She handed the man a drink and said it was a hangover remedy. The man, without a hint of suspicion, immediately drank it all. Just over 10 minutes later, the effects of the drug combined with alcohol began to take hold. The man quickly weakened, lost all strength, and then collapsed onto the sofa in the karaoke room. However, just as Kim had predicted, while karaoke rooms have private booths, they are inherently semi-public spaces. Staff can enter at any time, and patrons from other rooms frequently walk the hallways. Not long after, someone noticed the man's unusual condition. Seeing his lips turn blue and his breathing grow shallow, those around immediately called 119 for emergency medical assistance. Ultimately, the man was saved. This failure helped Kim confirm that the drug combined with alcohol could indeed render a person defenseless almost immediately. However, the only drawback was karaoke not private enough. So Kim began to seek a more secluded place, a place where no one could unexpectedly enter. And that place was a motel. Just 4 days later, around 9 p.m. on January 28, 2026, as life in Seoul began to wind down, Kim, accompanied by a man in his 20s, entered a motel in Sujodong and rented a room. This man was likely a dating prospect Kim had recently met through a dating app. In the room, the two drank quite a bit and the atmosphere gradually became intimate. Just as the man thought it would be a romantic encounter, Kim produced the familiar drink and gently said, "We drank too much today, have this, you'll feel better tomorrow." Faced with a beautiful and caring young woman, the man was completely unsuspecting. He took the drink and finished it. Just over 10 minutes later, the drug began to take effect. The man quickly lost strength and collapsed, falling into a coma. As her prey succumbed, Kim immediately shed her sweet facade and quickly erased any traces in the room. She took all the bottles containing the drug, leaving only clean water bottles to confuse forensic investigators. Then she quietly closed the room door, slipped out of the motel, and vanished into the cold winter night of fear. At 2:50 p.m. on January 29, 2026, the room was long past checkout time, but there was no response when the front desk called. Sensing something was wrong, the motel owner used a spare key to open the door. Inside, they discovered the man's body lying on the bed. In theory, the unusual death of a healthy young man in a motel room should have raised police suspicion. However, upon examining the scene, investigators found no stab wounds, no signs of strangulation, and no indications of a struggle. Therefore, they concluded that the man might have died suddenly from excessive alcohol consumption, and temporarily ruled it a case of death by unknown causes. This oversight by the police only fueled Kim's confidence further. In her mind, her method of murder was so flawless that even the police were deceived. Immediately after leaving the scene, Kim casually posted a selfie on social media as if nothing had happened. She even added a string of hashtags like "follow me, follow back," and DM to connect. Kim particularly enjoyed posting photos. Kim especially loved posting selfies, uploading about 10 photos daily, while simultaneously chatting with numerous strangers online, which was also how she scouted for new victims. Men who left comments like "You're so beautiful" had no idea that they were gradually falling into a deadly trap. And one of those men was the victim recently discovered in the motel room in Gangbuk. Just over 10 days later, on February 8, 2026, Kim targeted another victim. This man, surnamed Lee, was a young laborer around 20 years old. Faced with a young woman who was proactive and showed interest, Lee overlooked almost all danger signs. The two quickly became close online and arranged to meet in person the following evening. In their messages, Lee cheerfully asked, "Sure, what's the name of the barbecue place?" On the evening of February 9, 2026, in the Jingdao motel room, Kim repeated her exact same modus operandi. She handed Lee a pre-prepared hangover drink. After confirming Lee had completely stopped breathing, Kim stood up and began cleaning the scene. She placed all the pills and bottles she brought into a black plastic bag. Then she used Lee's own phone to order fried chicken to take home. Around 10:40 p.m., just 2 hours after the two entered the motel, security cameras captured Kim's image. This time she left alone, tightly clutching the black bag containing the evidence and the fried chicken. It wasn't until the evening of February 10, 2026 that the motel receptionist discovered Lee's body in the room. This incident immediately caught the attention of the police, as it bore a striking resemblance to a mysterious death that occurred at another motel in the area on January 28. At the same time, the toxicology results for Kim's ex-boyfriend also came in. The report indicated an extremely high concentration of prescription sedatives in his blood. The ex-boyfriend who reported to the police the man who collapsed at karaoke, the victim from January 28, and the victim who died the previous night. All these clues eventually led to one person. That person was Kim, 20 years old. After confirming her identity and gathering sufficient evidence, the police immediately launched an arrest operation. Around 8 p.m. on February 10, 2026, the major crimes unit surrounded Kim's apartment in Myeodong, Gangbuk District. As the police prepared to break down the door, Kim was returning home from a date. She was still choosing photo filters and uploading a new selfie online. The next day, the door was kicked in and Kim was apprehended on the spot. During the apartment search, police discovered in a corner and in the refrigerator, piled high with various energy drinks along with 30 to 40 different sleeping pills. Throughout the interrogation, Kim remained remarkably calm. She claimed she had no intention of killing anyone. According to her, she only put sleeping pills in his drink because she had argued with her boyfriend, and she wanted him to sleep for a while so they could stop talking. Kim stated she didn't realize the medication would be so potent as to cause his death. On February 12, 2026, the Seoul Central District Court held a pre-trial detention hearing. Kim, wearing a black puffer jacket and a mask, refused to answer any questions from reporters. After reviewing the case file, the judge issued an arrest warrant due to concerns about her potential flight risk. From that point on, Kim was indicted on charges of manslaughter and violating drug control laws. In reality, 2 people had died, so by law she should have faced murder charges. However, to prove murder, investigators needed to demonstrate a clear intent to take a life. The issue was that Kim didn't use traditional poisons, but rather prescription sedatives from the benzodiazepine class. Concurrently, she consistently maintained that she had no knowledge these medications could be fatal. Therefore, in the initial stages, police struggled to prove intent to murder according to legal standards. However, during the digital forensics examination, police discovered chat logs between Kim and an AI. In these conversations, Kim had repeatedly been warned about the fatal risks of combining medication with alcohol. Despite this, Kim doubled the dosage of the medication. This small detail made her defense that she didn't know how dangerous the drink was difficult to sustain. Simultaneously, the investigative agency also released the official autopsy results. In the bodies of both victims, experts found a mixture of various drugs in significant quantities, primarily benzodiazepines, prescription sedatives. Regarding the motive, police believe financial gain may have been a significant factor. According to the investigation, Kim faced financial difficulties and frequently sought out men online to act as ATMs. During their meetings, she often had her dates pay for their outings and meals. In one instance, Kim demanded expensive gifts from a victim, and when he refused, she drugged his drink. Additionally, 2 other victims were involved. One paid for a high-end meat delivery, while the other bought Kim a necklace worth 130,000 won, approximately $100 United States dollars. However, after receiving payment, Kim continued to demand more. When the 2 men disagreed, she acted as if she had accepted. In reality, she gave them the pre-drugged drinks. On February 19, 2026, police decided to upgrade the charges. The initial charge of manslaughter was upgraded to premeditated murder, the highest possible. Prosecution. The case was then officially transferred to the prosecution. At the same time, Kim's social media accounts began to go viral online. Normally, a suspect in a serial murder case would cause people to shy away. But in reality, it was the complete opposite. After Kim's photos were leaked, her account, which only had 240 followers, skyrocketed to 11,000 in just a few days. That's 45 times more, almost spreading exponentially. The comments section was flooded with phrases like "beautiful people" or "innocent." And there were even rumors that some famous K-League soccer players were following her account. However, the reality was not that the athletes were following Kim, but rather that Kim herself had previously actively targeted young, attractive, and well-off men and found ways to approach them. By February 25, 2026, under pressure from the police investigation and public outrage, Kim's social media accounts were switched to private. Then on March 4, 2026, the results of Kim's PCLR psychopathy assessment were released. Her score exceeding the 25-point threshold, the standard used in South Korea to determine psychopathy. Therefore, the authorities officially concluded that Kim belonged to the psychopathic group. At the same time, facing a wave of public outrage, the Seoul Northern District Prosecutor's Office was forced to respond. The office announced that it would convene a public deliberation committee to review whether to disclose Kim's personal information. Just as the video about this case was nearing completion, the case took a new turn. On the afternoon of March 9, 2026, the prosecution finally lifted the information restriction order and released the suspect's true identity and an unblurred portrait. Her real name was Kim So-hee and she was only 20 years old. As the trial has not yet begun, it is possible that other victims may emerge during the subsequent investigation. Therefore, the full extent of the case may not yet be revealed. And that concludes the developments of the case in today's episode. A story that began with seemingly ordinary dates, but ultimately led to a chain of crimes that shook South Korean society. If there are any new developments or investigation updates in the future, I will continue to update you in subsequent videos. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to support us and not miss out on daily case updates. You can also leave your thoughts in the comments section below. In your opinion, what is the most frightening aspect of this case? In your opinion, what is the most terrifying aspect of this case? Thank you all for following and see you in the next episodes of the High Stakes Case.